All these fucking crypto motherfuckers lonely as hell, like going to conferences, resident proof, and like digital nomads. Like the collectivism is an easy sell.
It is literally my fucking job at Opacity to make sure we win and be goddamn sure you're glad you have a capitalist as your go-to-market strategist to make sure we fucking win and we fix the internet, because capitalism does have a chokehold on distribution and effective, I won't call it egalitarian, but there is no better method that we've seen today to take these inventions which come from autists and leftover mold and bring them to the world.
The way that the economies are set up now, it's like normal people don't have access to the upside. It's just like whoever controls the capital. Opacity and ZKTLS is like one of the weapons against this.
In reality, if you are on the left and you are serious about that political position and wanting to put forth that politics, that is an admission that you want to seriously change the status quo and you seriously want to challenge existing powers. And kind of like the easiest way to prevent you from being able to do that is just like blocking your bank account and whatever else.
I am like allergic to the fucking American rhetoric about governance and crypto. Like, it is so VC washed. It is so far away from the actual principles of cooperatives and like actual orgs that run in non-hierarchical like ways. There we go. The communists are here.
That's right.
Dude, you got a new beard every time I see you, Ron.
Ron, you're looking really fresh today, dude. You got the shirt and everything.
Yeah.
You got to represent the BreadChain.
You got the crypto left baddies. You know, they have high standards. You gotta
Both of them.
Is that a huge like a dating market, Ron? The crypto left baddies here in New York?
Somehow all these fucking motherfuckers except me and the crypto left scene are in relationships with one another. Like Josh, like fucking Hudson, like all these motherfuckers. But like the ratio of the NYC crypto leftists, which by the way, right now in the polls for our new name, crypto left tits is leading, but I'm gonna have to veto that. We can't be doing that.
Milk for everyone.
We're diverse, and it's not surprising that we're diverse because we're fucking progressive, and all your fucking Trump MAGA bros like women uncomfortable, and we're like a space where like, oh yeah, we're trying to make the world a better place. Also, like women fucking, yeah, they go, did you see that graph of like men and women in America diverging politically? Like, it's cooked. It's over for you guys. It's going to be natural selection.
By the way, this is subversive as fuck, because Ron sent me one message in Slack. He's like, please don't make too many comments about the women. He comes in firing hot, knowing that I can't respond out of respect for my engineer who I love. So, okay, Ron, take the dub, but we're going to have to move on to the next topic. All right, guys, let's clap into the podcast. I'll lead here a little bit. Hersh, let's start with you, because I think the genesis of this is basically you argue politics with Ron regularly in venture capital real estate, which I think is empirically hilarious. What's the start of this? How did this get started? And then once I think we have a little context, we'll get some intros from Josh and Ron on who they are, what they're up to, and maybe why they're here to yell at the evil MAGA bros, as they call us.
I haven't said anything.
As Ron called me.
It is true. Ron and I, on our smoke breaks, when we're not discussing protocol design, we're basically just like arguing political ideas. And I think it took me a while to like realize that crypto left is kind of like its own unique philosophy. And it's like really separated out from like traditional socialism or like Marxism. And so I wanted to have like Joshua and Ron onto the podcast just to like lay out what the crypto left like ideology is. The conclusion I've come to is just like crypto left is just traditional, like socialism, but instead of Stalin, it's a smart contract, right? Which is an interesting like idea actually to consider. But I guess to start, starting with Josh, why don't we just get like your background, how you got into crypto, and just like how you came to crypto as like a foundation for a new way to have leftist philosophy.
I think that's like the most creative introduction I've gotten so far on a podcast. But yeah, my name is Josh Davila. I am a podcaster, writer, accidental co-founder But you may know me the most from the platform called the Blockchain Socialist, which I started about 5-6 years ago now at this point, where basically I just wanted to have a place and platform to kind of discuss the intersection of crypto and left-wing politics, because I had been for a long time involved in both and just not finding very much space where they kind of converge in a way that I thought was very constructive and very fruitful. I had a lot of thoughts on it. I had a lot of ideas, and I was waiting for like a year or two for someone to start something like that, and nobody did. So I kind of said, fuck it, why don't I try it myself? So I bought a WordPress site, spent $200 on everything. And then because I spent that money, I was like super pressured then to actually do it. And then I promised some people on a subreddit that I started that I would put something out every week. And I kept that promise because I don't like to lie to people. And then I wrote a book that came out in 2023 called Blockchain Radicals, kind of laying out a like more comprehensive take on what blockchain is or what it brings for left politics and vice versa. And yeah, I mean, I really got into crypto, honestly, because I was broke. I graduated college, had a ton of debt. I was like, I had a job and I was driving Uber and I was like barely making ends meet. And I was like, I got a degree in neuroscience. I was like, maybe I can like, play the like biotech stocks game, because I could read the papers, or I had some like stupid ideas like that. And then I would be somehow be able to know that like when the medicines are coming in, because I don't know if you know how biotech stocks work. It's like, as soon as they get approval, it goes whoop. So I thought I could like do that. Turns out I cannot do that. And in the process of finding out that I couldn't do it, I found Ethereum. Ethereum was, pretty new. It was like 2016. There was this idea of smart contracts and DAOs. And that was all really interesting to me from a left-wing point of view. At the time, I was also, learning just more from like primary material of socialist writings and thinkers. And I saw a clear connection that I couldn't really articulate very well at first. But over time of forcing myself to kind of mash these two seemingly opposite things to a lot of people, I somehow made a brand out of it, unfortunately, for better or for worse. And then now I'm here talking about it.
I love a brand, so I'm happy you have a brand. Well, I don't know if it's socialist or not, but I'm happy you have a brand.
I gotta thank Dawufi and Hersh for inspiring me to get the Crypto Kibbuznik brand going. It's been going pretty well so far. My deal is like, I was living in urban communes, and then I lived in something called the kibbutz, which is like very problematic in many ways and has a lot of history related to like imperialism and shit. But there's also Japanese kibbutzes, which are less problematic. But either way, it's a fairly generic like structure. It's an agrarian, self-sustaining cooperative like unit, can scale anywhere between like hundreds to tens of thousands to like, yeah, even tens of thousands, some edge cases. And I was just like, in the desert, looking at the solar panel farm, looking at the cheesery, looking at the winery, looking at the fields. I was like, this shit checks out. Like, I grew up in New York. That didn't make sense to me. This definitely did make sense to me. Felt like I wasn't like oppressing the entire fucking world with my every waking breath. And I was like, okay, I talked to the boomers, and I was just like, how did you guys do this? And they were like, oh yeah, we were just like in capitalism. We were like, damn, this sucks. And we were just like, fuck it, let's leave. And I was like, okay, how does my generation get this? I was like, okay, so I'll make like a Tinder for communes, or like a Tinder for kibbutzes. And I like started running that through my head. And I was like, okay, so I gotta like, what about liability? How do they manage the finances? Do I have to be custodial of the finances? What am I going to get to sign like contracts and lawyers and all? Oh shit, crypto solves this. And I had this like little insight, and then that threw me onto the whole like intersection between like crypto and left, how like sort of enforcing things without violence is very congruent with like anarcho-syndicalist thinking. Having like a high bandwidth of democracy allows for like collective ownership more effectively, being able to create anti-corruption measures such as like anti-Stalin authoritarianism, smart contracts, etc. And ever since then I like started trying to tell people about it. And I am not so good with the words as Josh is, as he will tell you many times. I'm kind of too impatient. So I was just like, all right, fuck it. We build it. They just got to show up. We just got to show them, like, in order to convince them. Got my comp sci degree, got my first job at crypto. And yeah, been on this warpath since 2018, pretty much.
Wait, did you get your degree to like be able to go on this journey of proving out blockchain, like crypto
Yeah, yeah.
left? Oh wow, I did not know that.
When I started, there was like there was no smart contracts yet. I was thinking about how I could do this with like Bitcoin wallets, like representing machine code, like in the fucking like digits of the wallet, basically. Like it was, yeah. I was like, okay, I gotta study this shit.
He was committed to the bits.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say I love that the communists started off with a warpath, so we're all very on brand right now.
Yeah, we're on the Rubicon podcast right now. This is great.
Anyone who didn't believe my tweet that opacity is all autists, just more proof in the pudding. Every single one of us in our own way.
Hersh only hires people with a chip on their shoulder. It's no.
Yeah. But I guess to start, what does like blockchain uniquely enable for your guys' as like goals and just like, you know, a communal economy overall? Like what key problems does it solve?
I already know what Ron is going to say, and you'll notice that like we'll have you'll see that it's a bigger tent than you may think. We have, at least the way that we approach and frame it might be slightly different, because I've heard him answer these types of questions so many times to people. But at least for me on my end, I think it solves a couple of different things, or like the way that I like to divide up what crypto is interesting for when it comes to a left-wing politics is there's the things that we can do now that it's useful for, and that revolves around like censorship resistance, because like, let's, in reality, if you are on the left and you are serious about that political position and wanting to put forth that politics, that is an admission that you want to seriously change the status quo and you seriously want to challenge existing powers. And kind of like the easiest way to prevent you from being able to do that is just like blocking your bank account and whatever else. So we saw that in the very first use case of crypto was essentially the donations to WikiLeaks through Bitcoin. Whether or not WikiLeaks is left or right is whatever, doesn't really matter. I think the structure at least is true, where if you have this type of challenging of powers, then you can do something to protect yourself. And then the other kind of like grouping of things broadly, I think, are more future looking, or more like, so one is more like protecting yourselves and what you have. And the other one is more so like trying to create new things to replace the existing institutions, if that makes sense. So I view blockchains or cryptocurrency as a kind of design space, an economic design space where you can more easily mix and match different types of economic mechanisms to produce a kind of economy that you could, arguably make real, or try to make real in a way that is technically resilient at the very least. I still think there's a lot of problems it doesn't solve, of course. And I think like for me, my politics is rooted in a kind of, like being a socialist first, and then seeing what's out there to help with that type of politics. So yeah, that's kind of like the things that I see, and inside of those are like umbrellas of different things around agreements, around like just how we interact with each other, how do you want to allocate things, and being able to compute democratic input into those things, I think is like a key element, part of that makes kind of what I would deem to be a socialist economy different than a kind of largely just market-driven one. But the market-driven one has largely succeeded in the crypto space so far, as I'm sure we can all agree with.
I mean, we can say that the market ones succeeded everywhere, but I'm being spicy on purpose. At this point, it's not just crypto where markets have succeeded. I don't know, Ron, you want to take the same question?
Yeah, just for clarification, you said on the socialist side, you have like democratic inputs into it versus, and that's a big distinction, versus market economies. But I would argue in market economies, you do have a democratic input. It's just the choice to buy something or not, right? What's the difference there on the socialist side? Is it like on just like governance and controlling what people can't like are and aren't allowed to like sell?
Right. So I would say it's more, I would disagree. Like, this is a really common, like, argument, like liberal arguments about the mixing of democracy and capitalism that, and that kind of consumer, so like, essentially my argument is that that's reducing everything to consumer choice, which is different than democratic input. It's like, it's the vote with your dollar type of arguments that I would say is not very democratic. I mean, at least the kind of original ideas around democracy are like everyone gets a vote and they all get an equal say in what we do, depending on whatever the question is that you're trying to solve with it. So the ability for people to accumulate more capital and significantly more capital than others gives an outweighted voice to others. Like, that is kind of like that is the mechanism in which actually plutocracy is kind of created, is that I would argue that capitalism is a kind of centralization machine of capital, of wealth, and that inherently then downstream effect is also power. So like, you could argue, like, I would argue that, you know, all economies are planned to some degree. It's just that under capitalism, the people who plan the economy are billionaires, they're large corporations, they're those with the capital who have the ability to like significantly change structures to the image or to their own goals. So, I mean, there is something to say about consumer choice as being a signal in what things are created or not. But I would say like, at the same time, it's a very blunt instrument for measuring like what people actually want, if that makes sense, in an economy. I mean, sure, you can say something about regulation about what is sold and what is not sold, but I think that's kind of a slightly separate question than to like consumer choice.
I see. And Ron, anything to add there?
I'm gonna double back to the original question. To me, like, being able to like control resources without necessarily invoking violence, like without necessarily invoking like contract lawyers, police, etc., is very beneficial to like some of the more like anarcho-syndicalist, leftist like ideologies that sort of like have these cascading economic agreements between groups of different sizes agreeing on different economic inputs and outputs. In general, I think that like there's this capitalist, argument of like, oh, you can't plan the economy. It's too many signals. And then like Walmart just like literally will fucking plan the entire supply chain of a rural area, drive out all the local businesses, fix the prices, and like algorithmically basically dominate the entire sector. And China's been doing a lot of that. And as we like accelerate even further into like quantum, crypto, AI economics, like I don't know where we're going to end up. And what scares me is the idea that things like Walmart and Amazon will keep on like controlling this. And I think the ability to have this like state machine or computation or whatever to be like distributed and controlled at like a very high bandwidth, a very high direct democracy bandwidth or delegated democracy or whatever mechanism, which is very hard to tell what we will need to develop in order to actually scale this. Having this enforced not by physical violence, not by somebody who can just come in and then subvert the mechanism to their desires, but by something immutable is a huge value add. In addition to that, like I feel like the technology itself is very like anti-imperialist in that we've seen like imperialists like Putin, like Trump toy around with it and sort of like understand. I see Josh is sort of like, again, the tent is pretty big, but to me, like there is something about being able to create agreements that even like imperialists can't come in and override. That gives me some hope for like scaling more like communal like economies. The transparency and like anti-corruption angle is also something I talked about a bit earlier, where I feel like even like not at the like imperialist challenging some economies, but like literally you're like in our cooperative, it's a fucking multi-sig. Like even if me and Josh like spin out and become like schizoids and like we suddenly want to like do some crazy shit, we literally can't. Like we just can't. We don't have the power to. And that like over time is just like leads to much better systems and outcomes in my opinion.
What is BreadChain, and like what's the overall goal for like what's the 100-year vision for BreadChain? Lay it out for us.
100-year.
All right, maybe 10 years. Let's bring it back.
I mean, fully automated luxury communism is probably that. But
I think it's fully
in my-
automated luxury gay communism. Let's not drop out the gay there.
sure. I've heard queer, gay or queer or however, whatever you want to be. But no, yeah, so BreadChain is a project that I co-founded with some people who were part of the crypto leftist community who were also working in the crypto space or just really interested in it. And it came out of discussions around kind of like first being like, we're talking about all these things that we think are really cool, but why don't we actually build something and turn into reality some of the things that we're talking about? And so it started from that point of view and started with this question of like, what does it look like for people on the left to begin to get into the crypto space? What are the types of things that we can show would be useful for that type of politics, while also solving some real problems that come with the contradiction of being under capitalism, but saying that you want something else, right? It's not like it's not an easy problem, especially the funding problem, that if you want money, then you gotta somehow get it from investors, you got a rich friend or whatever else. And so being on the left, we're somewhat skeptical of taking investment, or like it doesn't really feed well into what we want by taking in investment. So we wanted to create some sort of way to make an alternative. And so then we created the crowd staking application, as we called it. Essentially, it's meant to mimic a local currency, kind of a local currency and a credit union combined, where as a user, you provide stablecoins, XDAI, this is on Gnosis chain. The contract converts it into SDAI, which accrues yield. And every month, based on the amount of stablecoin you've given, which has turned into a cryptocurrency called Bread, which is just an ERC20, you're able to vote on where the yield gets distributed amongst projects that are politically aligned. So in the same way that a credit union or a bank or whatever just would make investments in different things, similar to local currencies, they oftentimes will take, national dollar, they will give you local dollar, and then they'll use that national dollar to make loans and whatever else. We just use DeFi as a way to kind of automate a lot of those aspects of it, and make it a bit more efficient, and as a way to kind of slowly fund ourselves and fund projects that need it.
More yield than of our capitalist counterparts or capitalist funded counterparts that have built very elaborate mechanisms, but end up distributing less, just sniping. We were also the first with this kind of mechanism.
So the mechanism was designed by Ari Rodriguez. As you guys know, he's the CTO of Arrakis Finance. So the idea is kind of like to use this as a kind of primitive to help create a network of projects that can both receive funding and do the type of work that they want to do, and people can help fund those things without giving a donation. So like, or at least a donation in the kind of like usual way that you think of a donation. You're giving up your rights to the yield that is generated, but you're not losing any money by doing so. So a big problem that you kind of see in more progressive circles on what happens is that like some event happens, everyone reacts, everyone makes a GoFundMe or whatever else. They ask for donations until everybody kind of runs out of money and getting donations, and then it kind of dies off eventually. So trying to find a kind of more sustainable model than that. But yeah, so now at the point though, recently this past year, we've kind of, our scope of what we're doing has expanded a little bit to where we are doing things like just doing some client work for people. We're starting an AVS potentially with thanks to Ron's little invention called Gas Killer, and various other things in the mix, and trying to generally build applications that are not things that that people in crypto are generally doing, but we can find as being particularly useful and based on some sort of solidarity economics.
Yeah, there's like we call bread like a solidarity primitive, and there's all kinds of like other primitives, things such as brute funds, things such as saving circles, which like saving circles is just its own persistent like sector of the economy. There's halal versions of it. There's 60 different names for it all over the world, and we're working with some people we're building it in Nigeria, Kenya, and Tanzania to create like a crypto version of it. We are onboarding like cooperatives into crypto. We want to sort of like specialize in that. We're currently working with a Serbian artist cooperative, which is funded by an EU grant to onboard them to crypto. And we created a crisis kit, which we're looking to modularize as well. That is it 300K, Josh? That the volume of donations that went through it
for ETH evacuations, yeah.
And I think to go to like the 5 or 10 year plan or whatever, I can give you my pitch, which is not the BreadChain pitch.
Let's hear it.
It's the Ron. Yeah,
let's hear the Ron pitch.
To me, like the vision, like there's two sort of like verticals, I guess, or like two different like paths that we want to take. One is like, even in the most late stage capitalist phase that we are in right now, like according to the UN, 10% of the economy is cooperative. There's a lot of traditional cooperativism. We would like to like have POCs that are like crypto cooperatives, be able to scale them. We run our own cooperative as a crypto cooperative, and sort of like eventually break into the more traditional cooperative economy, and see if what these sort of like needs are there and how we can like provide crypto solutions for them. And like scaling this and sort of understanding, starting with like POCs, onboarding cooperatives, and then sort of understanding even inter-crypto cooperative like agreements, how that can accelerate things, is something that I think we should explore. And then the other avenue is this sort of like crypto collectivism pipeline, which is, I thought I was going to have to fucking kibbutz pill the crypto people. But like, there are already crypto eco villages. All these fucking crypto motherfuckers lonely as hell, like going to conferences, resident leave, and like digital nomads. Like the collectivism is an easy sell. So the idea is like this pipeline from, you go to an event, right? And maybe the event is an unconference. I don't know if you guys have ever been at an unconference, but it's sort of like where the responsibility for the conference itself, like things like cleaning, the content, the like cooking, whatever, is like the labor is distributed between people. So maybe having like a smooth pipeline from going to this event and have this platform. And you might not even know that it's crypto, right? But you're just using a platform to sort of like manage the event. And then going from that event to a residency. And then from a residency, maybe to a commune. And then from a commune, maybe you want to like join some cooperative or make a cooperative, or like go to like a crypto eco village. And from the crypto eco village to have like some region of a couple of like crypto self-sustaining agrarian units, which at that point, if you have a couple of them and they're planning their production and they're planning their economic agreements with cryptographic agreements, and they're sort of like scaling up, that to me is the MVP for like post-capitalism, or like an opt-out of capitalism, where it's like, okay, this is something that the average person can look at and be like, oh shit, this shit checks out. It's way better than wage slaving at like whatever job, dead-end job I'm at. I would like to explore this. I can have like a sense of community. I can like own the means of production. I like understand like who the people I'm working with are, and like they appreciate me and why we're doing it. And I have some like a greater degree of influence on how the organization actually works. So that to me is like the MVP. I don't know if that's like 5, 10, or like 20. Like I used to think that this stuff, I'm not even going to see it. And then like it just started happening and things are like accelerating. So it's hard to tell.
Just so I understand correct, I'm going to repeat back in simple terms. Is the idea for BreadChain just like the substrate for people to have like to use to build like their own local cooperatives? like throughout the world, essentially.
Nobody else is going to help you make a crypto cooperative other than BreadChain right now. So yeah.
So you have a monopoly.
I don't know if that's a monopoly, Hersh. I think that's just a lack of demand.
Where's the PMF? Where's the PMF, bro? I'm gonna get that
Where's the
10%, Dawufi. I'm gonna get it.
Where is that? Where is the PMF? Tell me about the PMF, Ron. What's the closest thing you guys have to PMF?
Yeah, what's the go-to-market?
It's the fucking go-to-market. I mean, have you seen what's the name of that Spanish cooperative chain, Josh?
Mondragon.
Yeah, like there's a lot of proven PMF for cooperative. Like in the BreadChain PMF is like there are enough people who want our like software services. That's one thing. Like satisfying all sorts of like grants and like crypto cooperative like customers is, but we're not doing it for profit. We even do some of this stuff completely not for profit. Like inherently we are funding non-VC funded crypto left projects, and we probably will continue to be the only ones that do it. So I don't know how to engage with your PMF question. Like, who's going to help the fucking crypto communists in Africa build financial infrastructure? Like, I don't know. Is that PMF?
I love charity. I think it's great. I just don't think it's a valid Lindy system. That's been my argument for an extended period of time. I don't know, Hersh, I'll let you keep going off. But
well, here, the Spanish cooperative, actually, just to double click on that. Can you explain that one, Joshua? There's a big Spanish successful cooperative.
Yeah, there's a lot. So the largest cooperative in the world, or at least was, I don't know about recently, it might have changed, is this giant cooperative called Mondragon, which is based in the Basque Country in Spain. Started, I think, maybe in the 1930s or something like that. But they're largely focused on industrial kind of production of like industrial parts and stuff like that. But started by a Catholic priest who wanted to, I mean, he was coming from like a Jesus, Christian point of view of like wanting to live out those types of principles. And so and because, I mean, I don't know how much you guys know about like the history of Spain, but there is like there are different ethnic groups. The Basque Country is a different ethnic group. They speak a different language. They're, depending on who you want to ask and who I want to anger, they were oppressed at various times. And so they were not like as economically kind of wealthy as like other parts of the country. And the cooperative, so the cooperative as a kind of unit within that context made a lot of sense, because they weren't going to, there's no such thing as like investment during that time much either. They weren't going to get investment from like the Spanish fascist government or something like that. And so, they've been existing ever since then. And I don't know, they produce like billions in profits. It's just a business, really. It's mostly just a business. I mean, they have a university where they teach specific kind of principles about cooperativism. I went to there. It's just like in a little town in the Basque Country. It's super beautiful. But yeah, so like that is one example. There's also like as one big one, but also if you look at Emilia-Romagna, which is a region in Italy, like a major part of their economy is made up of cooperatives as well. That's kind of a major part of it. And it's also the region, it's like one of the wealthiest regions of Italy and has the least amount of inequality. So like a lot of the arguments around like pro-cooperativism is that it prevents inequality from getting bad in a sense. Within Mondragon is, if I remember correctly, the highest paid person in a kind of units within the cooperative. It's like a whole bunch of different spin-offs of different companies that are part of the parent company, but they're all run as cooperatives. But you're not allowed to get paid more than, I believe, 8 times more than the lowest paid person. And that's compared to like in the United States, the average of the CEO pay to like lowest paid wage worker in the US is like 350 like to 400 times more. It's like just to give a bit of an idea.
Well, for whatever it's worth, Hersh refuses to pay me 400 times what Ron pays. So I think Maybe Hersh is on your side more than I think.
Which is funny because I think founders don't even get paid that much, right? Like relative to the other current paradigm.
No, they don't. But there is a capitalist upside. I don't know if you're familiar with the term stocks and options.
I've heard of them, yeah.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a risk reward
I love
scenario.
capitalists are always like, oh, are you guys just trying to like have everybody have like a part of the shares of the society? Are you just bringing like stocks like to scale? And I'm just like, dude, people have been doing collective. Or somebody hit with me with the stake yesterday.
Okay, on this topic, I think, like you guys you mentioned a few times where one of the cool things about like BreadChain and crypto left is you could just as a normal person in this like ecosystem, if you will, you actually have control over like where funding is like allocated for projects and the overall direction for just like BreadChain as a whole. So, but that sounds to me like there's a reliance on governance essentially, and like, but I would argue like governance tokens in crypto is mostly just a reactionary thing to a hostile US government, and is just like a good argument for why you needed a token or for like your protocol, because you want like you can just raise more money from investors if you offer fast liquidity on the token, right? But I think it's like pretty clear that decentralized governance has a lot of issues. Like Morpho versus Aave is like a great example here, where in Aave to add like a new risk pool, you'd have to go through like a governance like a process, whereas with Morpho it's just like purely software defined, and you can make your own risk pool and then the market can decide. And that's why like Morpho is just a better system with less governance, and so it's grown a lot more quickly. I would be curious to get you guys' takes on like how much reliance on governance is there in like the system you guys are thinking of, and like where the pitfalls are, and how you like make sure everyone is like pointing like swimming in the same direction.
Right. I think that's a good question. I mean, I would say like generally the way that I frame it is that everything is governance. It's kind of like you can't be outside of governance. It's just a matter of like how you do governance, and you can do governance poorly and you can do governance better, if that makes sense. So yeah, but in the BreadChain system, the way that it works is we try to make it fairly minimal to take part in it. We are kind of like, I agree that like I'm also someone who doesn't want to spend like hours combing through forums and proposals and like trying to decide whether I should vote on like every little thing that, you know, I may not have all the context or understanding of. But in our system, it's simply like whatever amounts of bread tokens you've held over the past 30 days of the previous voting cycle gives you voting power to vote on the next voting cycle. And you just allocate points to the various choices, which creates a ratio. And then based on your voting power times the ratio, you apply to whatever is the existing amount of votes that has been kind of done so far by the system.
And then some other governance where I think we're like a bit minimalist even in our approach, like in our current systems, which is like the current yield recipients can vote to expand the set to like more yield recipients, which is actually kind of a nice like Sybil resistant way to do it, as long as you try like we start with like a trusted seed of projects. And then in terms of like how we manage the cooperative itself, we're doing a one person, one vote thing, like on the core team. That's how we decide all our financial decisions. Now, in terms of like, how do you see governance for the systems that you want to scale, or like, you know, in the more 5 to 10 to whatever year, I think like, I am like allergic to the fucking American rhetoric about governance in crypto. Like it is so VC washed. It is so like far away from the actual principles of cooperatives and like actual orgs that run in non-hierarchical like ways. So much of it has been like the consequence of like VCs putting millions of dollars into governance frameworks to like pump tokens so that people can use and shit. Like, I was dead ass, like, we fucking, we were like at 2,000 people in the desert, producing like multiple types of like industry. And we would just have meetings after breakfast, to discuss like where anybody could propose anything about the change of labor. And like some people had roles and we would rotate the roles and we would just solve shit by talking about it and voting. And like a lot of these like fucking quadratic, transcendental, hyper localist, like fucking protocols of knowledge sharing to like fucking, like, I don't know. A lot of that shit like kind of annoys me. Now, in the more like late, like the actual, but like fucking crypto left, like, in that like post-capitalist MVP of like, how do we solve governance there when it scales beyond just a couple of eco villages to like, maybe we're talking hundreds of thousands of people like economically planning. I think that is absolutely not a trivial thing. And I think that doing like a top down sort of like approach of like, oh, let me just take over New York and just like crypto plan everything so that everything is like a direct democracy and like plan the economy completely is a horrible, horrible take. I think it will have to be like, we can recreate all the systems that currently exist with crypto and slowly iterate from there. Like that's just to have like a sanity check. Like that's always an approach that you can start with. You can start with that at the municipal level and like evolve it over time if you don't want to like shake things up. And if you have like a nicer off-grid place to sort of experiment with, definitely it has to be a measured approach, but you can start like seeing how you're creating economic agreements between different groups. You can see how you're like enforcing them. If you need collateral, if you don't need collateral, if you're enforcing them on the different like reputation systems. Once you get out of like the super hostile, permissionless, late stage capitalist like game theory, like protocol game theory that we have to deal with in like opacity, right? Where like everybody's our fucking enemy at any given like moment in time and like they will absolutely shred us if we give them the chance, then like protocol design actually becomes a lot more sane and easier to deal with. To lay out like a complete theory of how this would work would take me a lot of time. But I don't know. Let's do this podcast in a couple of years. We'll see.
Yeah, but I think just to react to what you said there, it's like the situation you're describing with like a few thousand people in the desert. The binding for that group is that you're in person and there's like an implicit social slashing if someone is just like acting as like an asshole, right? I'm sure we've all experienced this where you're arguing with like a coworker or someone on Twitter that when they're just a handle, it's like you don't give a shit, you'll say some brutal stuff, but the moment you hop on a call, it's like you remember they're a human being, right? And so the concern that I have is when you try to scale the system out, you turn a human problem into like a tech one, and I'm not sure like you'll get a mapping there if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think like it's also been done. It's not maybe like the like the fucking end all be all global communist regime that is completely fair and like whatever has not been done. But like having like collectivism scale to like hundreds of thousands in a way that is not like horrible has been done. And definitely like in the going from a 2,000 person kibbutz to like a network of a bunch of them in a geographic region has also been done. I think you're so fucking right about like there's so many people who are just like, oh yeah, crypto will fix it. No, it won't. Crypto will not fix a commune. Okay. Like if you want to live in a commune, you have to deal with emotions. You have to like talk to people. You have to like be patient and like understand where the other person's at. And any level of collectivism requires this. And tech only, like crypto specifically helps with like some scaling aspects, some trust aspects, some bootstrapping aspects, but it does not solve all the social problems and human problems and political problems that like we will have to solve.
Anything to add here, Dawufi?
I've got so many questions.
Let's hear it.
We'll just go down the list, and one of them will turn into a longer conversation of what the fuck is luxury communism? What does that even mean? No, I hope, Jaji, we haven't met me. You haven't met me before. I hope you know I'm being a bit pedantic and bombastic for the podcast because I find it to be entertaining and people like it.
If you don't know, you don't know. It's fine. It's I mean, full automated luxury communism was just a meme. It was a meme on the left quite a while back now. I mean, there's a book written by Aaron Bastani called Fully Automated Luxury Communism, where he argues that kind of the contradiction of capitalism is that I mean, his argument, I read it, I agree with some things, not everything, but that yeah, we're reaching a certain point of abundance that makes capitalism kind of useless in many ways. But I mean, it's just largely, I think, the idea that we can provide for everyone their basic needs and their fundamentals, and even more, to the point that you can even offer things that are considered to be luxuries as part of everyday life and for everyone to enjoy, not just like a select few people. It's, I think, also a saying that's, you know, fully automated being that, like, right now, as automation kind of progresses and enters more and more into the economy, we become more productive, right? We're able to produce more stuff. We're able to like produce more things and whatever in the same amount of time or even less amount of time, but we're not working less. So there's this contradiction between like productive forces are getting better through technology and discovery and whatever else. You know, I think it was Keynes, he had predicted by the year 2000, we would be working, you know, 14-hour weeks or something like that because of the improvements in technology and automation. But that hasn't really panned out. And the kind of socialist argument for that is because of the organizational structure, the ownership structure that technology kind of largely resides in, which is that they're like, it's the property of a few people. And they can extract more wealth and profits out of it through the ownership of the technology, and it not being something that everyone has kind of like a stake in, or kind of the type of ownership, although that might not be the right word in it. We don't get the fruits of the labor of many of these technologies, or like the wider public does not. So fully automated luxury communism is kind of like, you know, trying to get at those things, if that makes sense to you.
It does. It totally makes sense. Again, I'm being a bit facetious, but I feel it's more entertaining to be so. I haven't staked a claim yet. We've just been sort of listening to you talk. As I think it's only fair at this point in the pod, and I don't know how much more time you guys have. So whenever this is cut off, let me know. But I like having these conversations with folks like yourself, because I do think there's a common thread here that we sort of believe people are good. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but like people want to help each other, at least if you give them the opportunity to. Not everyone, obviously, sort of like, you know, mid-curve type stuff. I mean, you kind of have to believe that, right? If you believe that a bunch of people can work together to help each other, then I think we are at least on the same page with that, right? But then the question is sort of at the edges or in the implementation of why these things are useful. And so to like stake some claims, like I don't think people need private jets. It's not like a human necessity, but I do think are you with me on that one?
Totally
okay,
agree.
Perfect. So
totally
we've got
agree.
a baseline.
Yeah.
So I don't think people need private jets. But what I do think here is interesting is that, like, I agree there should be a floor. We have enough money and resources. No one should be going hungry. I'm like for Bill Gates clearing malaria, although that's like maybe we can talk about that in a little bit, about like the larger benefits to humanity. And I have another tagline. I was telling Hersh about, I was like, go to sub-Saharan Africa and ask them who the president of PETA is, and ask them who made the iPhone. And like those guys fuck with cell phones, right? Like 100% of the time, there are these longer sort of long tail benefits from this extreme wealth accumulation. But I think more than a ceiling, I think the dream of sort of being able to achieve these things is in large part what sort of pushes humanity forward. And my concern with collectivism, and not saying people can't do it, right? I'm for choice in general, not just democratic choice. But I think one of the reasons I love crypto is it does give people opt-out systems to be able to build their own things that are censorship resistant. But part of that to me is like this sort of, it seems like almost inherent human nature to dream big and create abundance is almost defined by the fact that there isn't a ceiling. And that's why when you go across the world, despite the issues with politics and and despite the issues with immigration or capitalism, whatever it may be, I think the vast majority of the world would still prefer to live in the United States. And it's because of that uncapped ability to acquire wealth and a better life for you and the people that you care about. So I would love to hear. Ron is about to explode, so I'll throw it to Josh. if there's just to spite my homie, if you have any reactions to that, or if this is this tracking, does this make sense? Have you thought about this at all? Because I don't talk to socialists other than Ron a lot,
and about protocol design maybe more so.
I can't code for my life. I avoid this. Yeah, no, I avoid protocol design. I'm here to help. For whatever it's worth, I'm here to help you guys evangelize. I believe that you guys are trying to help people, and if people want to get help by you, I believe that's totally fine. I just also think it's sort of piggybacking on capitalism, and all the free Diet Coke at the VC offices that you guys, that Ron and Hersh drink, is funded by a hugely, maybe the most capitalistic expression in the world as an organization.
I mean, in many ways, I don't disagree with that part for sure. I'm not against taking free shit from VCs if they're going to give it, but yeah, I guess to your point. I mean, I do think that. I just don't really think that it is true that the reason that people do great things is the promise of infinite wealth. That makes sense, or like infinite upside, or like if that's what you mean by kind of like having no ceiling.
Yeah,
like I do think that generally, like, and I feel like you probably think similarly as well, that like, I mean, if you think that no one should have a private jet, I think all private jets should be nationalized by the government or something. They don't need it.
Sorry, no.
Mega yachts,
no, sorry.
taken away.
So to be clear, I actually think people should have private jets if they can afford them and they want them. And that's part of like the crux of my argument, that like maybe people won't do it for infinite wealth, and maybe everyone doesn't do it for a private jet. But there are things that people want that are extraordinarily outside of the realm of the average, right? Like we're talking about our 10 sigma standard deviations outside of the average. And those people are the people who end up creating these things that create massive wealth generating benefits for the entire world. Ron, you're not allowed to talk. Josh is speaking right now.
Or they just discover it by mistake, or they like leave the fucking thing overnight at the lab, and it's like penicillin. Like, I don't know.
Wait, no, but those things get discovered. But my point is, those things don't get without, or at least we haven't seen. And I'm happy to hear counter arguments. If penicillin, I guess here's the argument, right? Here's the alternate universe history science fiction book version of this, right? Penicillin gets discovered in the commune, and then only 10,000 people get it because they don't fucking talk to anyone. Right? Like again, I'm being aggressive here, but that's the extreme bear case, right? They're like, fuck, we don't have to deal with herpes anymore. Maybe they overpopulate because they have because they don't have to worry about STDs. But
you're saying they wouldn't seek to distribute it to max extract the profit to other people, and that's why penicillin doesn't get distributed?
I'm saying that, especially in technology, but I think with drug development as well, that I'm not saying there are outliers like penicillin. I'm saying the vast majority of cancer treatment, radiation treatment, crops that can grow and feed the population that we have were built off the back of the capitalist system that seeks to, whether you call it extract, I could call it provide value. And I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm not saying there's not problems with Monsanto. I think there's a lot of problems with Monsanto. But I haven't seen a way or a philosophy that pushes the value out to humanity the way capitalism does. And I get concerned about collectivism as sort of almost an anti-growth philosophy when you boil it down to its core concepts. And things like Emilia Romagna is super interesting to me. I'm going to look into it more. But you said yourself, Josh, it's basically a business. And I'm not saying people can't help each other, but there's a lot of piggybacking that goes on the broader economy to get free things from VCs, which I think is noteworthy. I think it's noteworthy to appreciate the Diet Coke when it's free.
Sure. So I mean, there's a lot of things here. It's hard to know where to start, but like,
wherever you want. I'm waxing poetic now.
I mean, I think generally that, it's hard to dissect this term business, but I mean, like, socialist countries produce things, like they create things. They like there is like a history of inventing things in, if you want to call socialist or communist countries. This is like, I don't think that capitalism has like any right to claim like those types of things in my mind. And I said in the beginning, I studied neuroscience, and one job that got me a little bit out of poverty was working in health economics in Europe. And like you do notice that like the like drug production especially is held back by a lot of by kind of like investment requirements. Like that the reason that you see, for example, like a shit ton of, I don't know how cruel I can be, but like derivatives of Viagra on the market, and not like drugs that will help cure maybe more rare diseases but are like more useful for people, is obvious. Like you can make way more money off of a new Viagra than you can like finding a cure for a disease that only 10 people a year get, or something like that. The cancer stuff is also something else that like it is simply something that people pay top dollar. Like the type of contracting that these companies do when they're introducing these types of products is really interesting and kind of complex. But I used to do similar types of work when I was in another life. But so yeah, I mean, I think especially in healthcare, I think that's especially a place where you can argue that like the market doesn't really work, and that is why you have universal healthcare systems in Europe and in the US, why it's like quite tragic actually the health outcomes that the US healthcare system produces. It's, I think, one of the worst as far as like the developed countries. It's like, I mean, when you said earlier that like people want to move to the US, I don't know. I grew up in the US. I live in Europe now. I don't want to go back. I have a lot of European friends. They don't want to live in the US because they know about like the various downsides of what it's like to live in the United States, and they are willing to accept that trade-off being in Europe or wherever else that they're from. I think that's those types of things are a lot more complex. And my parents, they immigrated to the US, but they tried the American dream, but it didn't work out for them, quite frankly. So I think it's like a lot of these things are a lot more complex, and we forget that like the US is this like giant force around the world that projects a particular image about itself that is not always truthful, I would say. The US has definitely a larger potential upside for things that you create and things that you can that you may build, but it is largely not. It is because it's not the desires of necessarily like the general population that like produce wealth. I would say it is the desire of other places where capital is that makes wealth accrue, if that makes sense. So like if we go back to kind of like what Hersh was saying about money being a way in which like you express democratic input, this is kind of one of the side effects of it, is that like we're not necessarily producing the things that a general population would want to have or want to see. Like we're getting increases in efficiency and production and various facets of the world. A lot of that is funded by public research money. It is commodified or like kind of purchased by private capital often. And then that upside is like accrued by those who purchase it. So yeah, I think it's, I get what you're saying about like the production of wealth. And I think a lot of that does come from the improvement of technology and, which I'd say part of the reason that science kind of works is because basic science, although increasingly so, is not commodified in a way. Like plenty of discoveries were made because the government was just giving money for people to do nerdy shit. And like without any expectation of making money off of it, it just helped us understand the world. It helped us know what's going on. But like eventually maybe 10, 20 years down the line to produce something that was able to be introduced into the world in some sort of greater way, to produce wealth. But there's there are non-capitalist elements within the capitalist economy that feeds capitalism as well, if that makes sense.
I think it does. There's a flywheel here. I'm being argumentative for the sake of these things. I do think Europe piggybacks on the benefit of American dynamism. There's some pretty strong evidence of that, even around the regulation, which even the regulation I dislike. I think most of the healthcare world is sort of regulatory capture, which is unfortunate. I think we should show more capitalism at it, not less. I think is sort of my rough estimate there. I think we could get everyone rich as fuck. We'd see more stuff. And the last point I'll make is, on the health thing.
Sorry. I will say also it could just be that like actually most dimensions were just like either like autism or like some version of it, or just
someone
like,
had a chip on their shoulder.
Yeah, like I don't know that this like I don't even know that Hersh particularly is like thinking about a yacht and like having like a private jet or whatever. Like I think he's just like really mad and wants to fix the internet. Like
I totally agree. No, I totally agree with that. But let me defend myself. I'm banging on the table on this one. Capitalism does not have a chokehold on invention. It is literally my fucking job at Opacity to make sure we win, and be goddamn sure you're glad you have a capitalist as your go-to-market strategist to make sure we fucking win and we fix the internet, because capitalism does have a chokehold on distribution and effective I won't call it egalitarian, but there is no better method that we've seen today to take these inventions, which come from autists and leftover mold, and bring them to the world. And if there isn't a fucking moldy bread meme at some point, I'm going to actually riot. Hersh, you want to say something? I know we got to wrap up soon, but get in there, buddy.
Yeah. So on the topic of like the American dream, I think my family background might be interesting to point out here. So like both my parents are 5'6", and somehow I lucked out. I'm 6 feet tall, and it's because my parents grew up in a drought. It's important to the story here. Like we're talking like there was like a famine when they were growing up, so they all have stunted growth. We're lucky enough to come to the US. My dad delivered pizzas for like 80 hours a week for a decade, during like the Michael Jordan era in Chicago, to get enough money to start a small business, and is like the Subway sandwich franchise. And he forced me and my brother to work there starting at 13 years old, and no one got paid. And like, by the time like we were in high school, we actually like lived a pretty comfortable life. So it's like a success case for the American dream, but I'd say it's more so like the unlock there is just like cultural values, and coming from such like a rough time, like just like delivering pizzas for double the average like a work week is like a pretty easy thing to take on if you're growing up during like a famine, right? But since we're coming up on like closing time, I did want to kind of tie a neat bow and everything, and how actually Opacity and ZKTLS relates to luxury communism,
Socialism.
luxury socialism. Like you're talking about how like the way that like the economies are set up now, it's like normal people don't have access to the upside. It's just like whoever controls the capital, and it's like Opacity and ZKTLS is like one of the weapons against this, funny enough, where a lot of these tech companies, where their moat is just not having information leaving their systems. And so this is how social networks are able to like monetize each person for like $500 a year in the US or something like that. It's pretty crazy just on advertising. And so basically the internet today, but I guess this commentary applies to the economy overall, is like a lot industrial monocrop farm where we need to get to is more like a healthy rainforest, right? This is like what we're trying to do with ZKTLS, just like opening up these data silos so you can like build different markets on top of existing systems. Like one of our early partners is actually a decentralized food delivery network called Nosh, who is like who knows a lot about co-ops. I think Ron, you and him have been jamming for quite a while, but we just let them like have drivers export their like driver profiles over in restaurants. So if you want to like token incentivize building a decentralized like ride hailing or food delivery network. It's like traditionally one of the big issues of like self-dealing when you try to do a decentralized like ride hailing network. We may differ on, I guess, economic philosophy. I would say I'm more on the libertarian camp as well. Definitely have a chip on my shoulder and too autistic for my own good. But I think what we're all trying to get to is a healthy rainforest for the world versus just a monocropped like a farm.
I have 2 ZKTLS ideas written down that I want to make sure I get out. The first one I think is real, which you could get proof of like wage income, and then you could gauge contribution by percentage of wealth given. I think that's a little bit more democratic. I think that's an interesting idea. So that way rich people have to give more if they want to have equal share, and it's just a primitive to explore.
The Mormon
sort of
Church would love
system,
this,
if you
I
will.
think. The Mormon Church has the 10%
we were just talking about
ties.
Mormons before you got on. Yeah, I wish we had more time to talk about Mormons. We were just talking about Mormons before you guys got on. The second one, which I think is more interesting, you're not allowed to join BreadChain until you acquire negative 5,000 Reddit karma on our capitalist subreddit. So I think those are both really good ideas that you guys should implement. I know how fast Ron works. We can implement that tomorrow. But I will continue to make money so that Ron can have his free snacks at the VC offices. I'm happy to fund BreadChain in my own way.
I was at A16Z and they were like, you stay in the meeting room. Don't look at any of the IP and steal it for your communist revolution.
I'm happy to say, my sign off will be, I'm happy to be funding BreadChain in my own way.
Thank you for funding our socialism. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I know you're welcome.
I will. When the revolution happens, we'll spare you. You'll get your own little spot.
Listen, it's nothing. If I haven't made it clear, I'm a big believer in self-interest, so I'm happy to fund socialism out of self-interest. If you guys have any closing thoughts, please, before we wrap this up.
No, I appreciate giving us the time, entertaining our ideas, engaging in a fruitful and like constructive back and forth. I think it was really nice. I've never had the chance to talk about it, but yeah, I'm a fan of ZKTLS. When Ron explained it to me, I was like, holy shit, that's awesome. I think it's a really important technology. You guys are kind of solving one of the problems that capitalism has inherently through, I guess, computer science and mathematics that maybe would not have happened if we were in our communist utopia. But we're figuring it out along as we go, and I'm really excited to see how it all pans out. And check out my book, Blockchain Radicals, if you want to know more.
Where do we find it?
Online.
Where do we find it?
It's online. If you look
Blockchain
up
Socialist, just search for that.
Blockchain Socialist is my blog and podcast, is the website. There's also a link there, but if you Google Blockchain Radicals, you'll find the book on every platform that there is, basically, and audiobooks as well.
Beautiful. Ron, last shirt.
Yeah, I'm gonna go off about ZKTLS. Like, I think really what happened here is that corporations got the power to sort of be like, we're setting the standards. We're the ones that are funding all these committees, and we'll make things the most comfortable for us. And they just set the standard that like, oh yeah, you don't get to control any of your data, baby. We got it all. And like that to me inherently like is so short-sighted. Like even from the most libertarian capitalist perspective, it is so short-sighted, and it is such a self-report of greed and like of just like wanting to control and monopolize shit that like it is clear to me that this is like never going to like scale in the long term. And I think that like making everything verifiable, I made this like moral alignment chart. There are so many directions in which it is more moral to have this ability. And I am just 100% sold on that. Like, this is something that's almost close to a human right than like, or like a digital right than it is like a purely a market tool. And I think that people consider that more often, and in general that like the more we apply collectivist principles to protocol design, sometimes these things are very congruent, actually.
I love it. I think if ZKTLS can bring us together, it can do anything. Thank you, Josh, so much for coming on. Ron, I'll yell at you in Slack. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much, guys. I really do appreciate the time.
Yeah, no, this was really fun. Would love to do this again, maybe like in a year, have like a a second one.
Yeah, for sure. Anytime.
All right. Sounds good, guys. Talk to you later.
All right. Peace out.